I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it.
The instruction appeared ordinary, a brief palace gardening order carrying the Queen's approval. But when Prince William read the final line, his expression hardened. Prince Philip's memorial was to be removed from its place in the palace garden before sunrise and transferred to a secluded corner rarely visited by the family or the public. William did not request a delay. He did not consult the household. He placed the document on the table and declared that the memorial would not move. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William remained standing as the briefing fell silent. The prince had blocked an instruction from Camilla, and everyone understood. A remembrance garden is a palace space honoring royal family members after death, but this place carried deeper meaning. Philip had walked that path during gatherings when royal life became heavy. Charles remembered those walks. Anne remembered them. Edward did too. William knew moving the memorial would disturb something inside the family that could never be restored. The prince pushed his chair away and spoke without raising his voice. No stone was to be lifted. No plaque was to be unscrewed. No flower or personal object was to be touched. His calm made the order more powerful. It did not sound angry. It sounded final. Camilla heard the refusal through a recorded call from her senior aide, who repeated William's words and confirmed that the gardeners had been stopped. The queen consort gripped her desk and asked whether he understood that he had overruled her approved household instruction. Her aide hesitated. That pause told her everything. He understood perfectly. William returned to the papers and found the detail that transformed the crisis. The relocation had to be finished before the family gathered in the garden later that week. Philip's children were meant to arrive after the memorial had disappeared from its familiar place. The timing was not practical. It was strategic. Then the prince opened the attached garden plan. The space was not being preserved. It had already been assigned to a new terrace tied to Camilla and the present reign. This was not landscaping. It was a struggle over whose memory remained visible and whose was quietly pushed aside. William carried the order toward Charles's private rooms. He needed one answer. Had the king approved the move, or had someone ensured he never understood what was being done? But, as William carried the document down the corridor, one question became impossible to ignore. Who was Camilla truly trying to remove the memorial, or the man whose legacy still commanded the palace? To Camilla, the garden represented a living royal residence that had to change with the reign. To William, it held memories no official inventory could measure. And for King Charles, the memorial marked something even more painful, the presence of a father he had spent a lifetime trying to understand. What appeared to be a dispute over stone and soil was, in truth, a collision between three people carrying three very different versions of Prince Philip. William understood why the location mattered, because Philip had never been a distant figure in his childhood. The older royal had been firm, sometimes blunt, but steady, during years when the prince's family life felt uncertain, and the monarchy itself seemed fragile. That path through the garden had become a symbol of continuity. It reminded William that some presences did not disappear simply because the institution around them changed. Camilla saw the same space differently. The queen believed the palace should reflect the present reign, the period shaped by the current king and his consort, rather than remain fixed around old relationships, old wounds, and traditions inherited from another age. To her, renewal was not disrespect. It was survival. Yet the language attached to her proposal made William deeply uneasy. Charles sat alone with the relocation file while his son waited across from him. The king traced one finger along Philip's name, paused, and then closed the folder without signing it. He did not approve the move. He did not reject it either. Instead, the monarch placed the document inside a locked drawer and turned the key. William felt more disturbed by that silence than he would have been by anger. His father was not defending Camilla, but he was not protecting Philip's memorial. Charles looked trapped between his wife's ambition for the current household and the memory of a father whose approval he had spent much of his life seeking. Anne reacted differently. When William told Princess Anne about the order during a private conversation, she did not hesitate. Her voice stayed controlled, but the fury beneath it was unmistakable. She said Philip had chosen that path because it allowed him to walk unseen, think in peace, and briefly escape the weight of ceremony. Her father had not selected the place by accident. Then William showed her the replacement plan. The original site had been reserved for a rose terrace, dedicated to the partnership of the present reign. The prince read the phrase twice. To him, it sounded less like renovation and more like replacement, a new royal story being planted directly over an old one. Anne then revealed how the conflict had truly begun. According to her documented private account of the family discussion, Camilla had first raised the idea weeks earlier, during a memorial ceremony attended only by close relatives. The exchange had ended bitterly, and one sentence from the Queen had stayed with everyone who heard it. The blocked order had exposed the family's loyalties, but the true source of the conflict lay in that private ceremony and in the words Camilla could never take back. 3 weeks before William stopped the Gardiners, the royal family gathered privately beside Prince Philip's memorial to mark a deeply personal anniversary. There were no photographers, speeches, or crowds, only flowers, silence, and members of a family remembering the man who had shaped them all. Yet before the ceremony ended, Camilla made a proposal that changed the atmosphere instantly. What followed became the hidden trigger for the confrontation, now threatening to divide the palace. Charles arrived first and stood quietly beside the plaque. The king placed a small sprig from one of Philip's favorite garden plants beneath his father's name, then stepped back without speaking. Camilla followed, then William, Anne, Edward, and Sophie. Each carried a different memory. Each understood that this was not an official event, but a family remembrance held without ceremony, meaning a private tribute with no public audience and no formal royal program. William watched his father closely. Charles looked composed, but the silence around him felt heavy. Edward lowered his head as Sophie touched his arm, and Anne remained still for several seconds after placing her sprig. The Princess Royal had always guarded Philip's memory fiercely, and that evening she seemed determined to protect not only the man, but the place he had chosen to leave behind. Camilla broke the silence after the tribute. The Queen explained that palace planners wanted to redesign the central path before the next season of state receptions, the formal events where the monarch welcomes officials and guests. She spoke carefully at first, presenting the change as practical. Then she pointed toward the memorial. Moving it somewhere quieter, she said, would allow the garden to belong fully to the present reign. Anne stepped forward at once. Her voice remained low, but the anger beneath it was unmistakable. She told Camilla that her father had already chosen where he belonged. Philip had walked that path because it gave him privacy without removing him from the family. Moving the memorial would not protect his memory. It would push it aside. Charles lowered his eyes. The king said only that the matter could be discussed later. His words wounded Anne because they offered no defense. They encouraged Camilla because they sounded like permission. William said nothing, but suspicion had already begun to replace grief. As the family departed, the prince overheard Camilla speaking to a garden advisor in a recorded planning conversation, later preserved in the household file. She said emotional objections would weaken once the relocation had already happened. The truth became brutal. Camilla had ordered the work accelerated before the family's next gathering, expecting the completed move to become impossible to reverse. Anne returned to straighten the wreath beneath Philip's name. Camilla watched, closed her notebook, and walked away. William finally understood. This was never meant to be a family decision. It was meant to become a finished act Charles would be forced to defend. Armed with the truth and the unsigned authorization, William no longer intended to negotiate through aides. He was ready to face Camilla himself. The meeting took place without Charles, Anne, advisors, or private secretaries. William entered carrying the relocation order. Camilla remained standing behind her desk, refusing to offer him a seat. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then the prince laid the document between them and demanded that she withdraw it. Her answer was immediate. The garden fell under the authority of the reigning household. William stepped closer and delivered the sentence that shattered every remaining courtesy. Camilla held his gaze and defended the plan with cold precision. The Queen said the central garden was needed for official receptions, formal occasions where the sovereign welcomes guests on behalf of the monarchy. She insisted Philip's memorial would not be destroyed, only moved to a quieter position where it could receive greater privacy and protection. To her, the proposal was practical. To William, every carefully chosen word concealed the truth. The prince told her this was not about protection. It was about erasure. His grandfather's memorial had become inconvenient because it occupied the very place Camilla wanted to reshape around herself. William accused her of treating Philip's memory as an obstacle to her own place in royal history, and the accusation struck harder than either of them expected. Camilla's restraint finally broke. She told William he had never truly accepted her authority, and was now using Philip's name to challenge her position beside Charles. The Queen Consort said he was disguising a personal struggle as an act of family loyalty. Her voice sharpened. His did not. William opened the file and placed the unsigned page before her. Charles had never approved the relocation. The king had discussed renovating the grounds, but he had not authorized the removal of his father's memorial. William said silence could not be turned into royal consent, simply because it was convenient. Camilla reached for the papers, but the prince placed his hand over them first. The gesture was calm, deliberate, and final. He then revealed the attached garden plan. Philip's original place had been reserved for a rose terrace, celebrating the partnership of Charles and Camilla's reign. The move was symbolic, and they both knew it. "You will not move him," William said. Camilla warned that he had exceeded his authority. She reminded him that he was still the heir, not the sovereign, and demanded to know what power allowed him to stop an approved household order. William lifted his hand from the file and answered with quiet certainty. The relocation had already been suspended through a protection she had failed to consider. Camilla closed the door behind him, but the real shock was still coming. William had not acted alone, and the authority supporting him reached far deeper than she expected. Camilla believed William had issued a personal command. In reality, he had activated a protection written years before the current reign began. Prince Philip had anticipated that royal estates would change, gardens would be redesigned, and future households would seek their own symbols. But he had also made one request concerning the small memorial planned in his name. That request had been recorded, witnessed, and placed under the guardianship of someone Camilla had failed to consult. William brought the family agreement into a private review with Edward and Anne. The document was not a public law or royal decree. It was a binding household arrangement, meaning a written family commitment governing how the memorial could be treated. Its central condition was clear. Philip's resting tribute could not be moved without written approval from his direct descendants. Edward read the page slowly. The Earl paused over one line in which his father had described the garden as a place where family members could remember him without ceremony. That phrase broke through his restraint. He lowered the document, took a breath, and admitted that Philip had wanted simplicity, not grandeur. William watched him struggle, understanding that the dispute was no longer about procedure. It was about whether the family would honor the one quiet request their father and grandfather had left behind. Anne did not hesitate. She placed her pen on the table and said she would not approve the relocation, even if Charles personally asked her to preserve peace. The Princess Royal had spent years defending duty above comfort, but this time duty meant refusing the king if necessary. Her answer closed the first door Camilla had hoped to force open. William then used his own authority as senior heir to place an immediate hold on the work. That power allowed him to suspend changes affecting protected memorials until every required consent had been secured. He could not make the final decision alone, but he could stop an irreversible act. Palace officials delivered the next blow. Even Charles's signature would not be enough. The sovereign remained head of the royal household, but the family agreement stood outside ordinary garden management. Without approval from Philip's children, the memorial could not legally be moved under its existing terms. Then the dated note appeared. Camilla's office had been warned about the consent requirement before the order was issued. Someone close to the Queen had known the move could be challenged and had chosen to proceed anyway. Edward signed William's temporary protection order, then pressed both hands against the table to steady himself. The prince said nothing. Their brief nod transformed procedure into a promise made to Philip. When Camilla demanded the name of the aide who had withheld the warning, the answer devastated her. The instruction to continue had come directly from her own private office. The memorial was now protected in law and memory, but that protection destroyed Camilla's final defense. This crisis had never been a misunderstanding. By afternoon, the gardeners had been dismissed, the machinery removed, and Philip's memorial placed under temporary royal protection. Nothing in the palace garden had changed, yet everything inside the palace had. Camilla's authority had been publicly obeyed in the morning and privately dismantled by lunch. Staff who once moved immediately on her instructions now requested written confirmation. Family members stopped answering through aides. Even Charles could no longer avoid the decision waiting on his desk. A formal notice reached every department connected to the grounds. No alteration could be made to the memorial, the surrounding path, or any part of the remembrance garden until the family protection review was complete. That review meant the required relatives had to examine and approve any proposed change before work could continue. The instruction was clear, and for Camilla, deeply humiliating. Contractors were told to remove the Rose Terrace from the palace schedule. The wider redesign stopped with it. Plans that had once carried the Queen's approval were suddenly treated as uncertain, and the people responsible for carrying them out began asking whether William's office had cleared each decision first. The shift was quiet, but impossible to miss. Camilla felt it immediately. Alone in her dressing room, she pulled the garden briefing from her folder and tore the schedule in half. Anger moved faster than judgment. Within seconds, the Queen regretted the gesture, pressed the pieces together, and smoothed them across the table as though damage could be reversed by force. It could not. Her private secretary arrived with the truth Camilla had feared. During a documented internal meeting, the aide admitted that the consent warning had been removed from the final briefing. The Queen had wanted the relocation completed without another argument, and her office had treated the family agreement as an obstacle rather than a boundary. Camilla stared at the torn schedule and said nothing. Charles carried his guilt elsewhere. After sunset, the king walked to Philip's memorial with Anne beside him. The Princess Royal remained hurt but composed. She did not accuse her brother. She did not need to. His silence during the earlier ceremony had allowed the dispute to harden into open conflict. Charles removed one glove and rested his palm against the cold stone. "I should have stopped this before William had to," he said. Anne looked at him and answered softly. The issue was no longer only the memorial. Senior courtiers were now routing sensitive estate decisions through William's office, proving the future king's authority was already shaping the present reign. Charles finally understood the price of protecting Camilla from embarrassment. He would have to oppose his children, ignore his father's wishes, and weaken his son's first major act of royal guardianship. The king could no longer remain neutral, but his next decision would require more than a signature. It would require a private reckoning with William. Charles asked William to meet him in the garden after the palace had gone quiet. No advisors attended. No files were placed between them. Father and son stood beside Philip's memorial, separated only by the years of things neither had known how to say. Charles was not angry that William had stopped Camilla. He was wounded that the prince had believed stopping her required protecting Philip's memory from the king himself. Charles chose the memorial instead of an office because he did not want ceremony, rank, or palace language standing between them. The king wanted the conversation to happen beside the man whose memory had exposed every weakness in the family. Philip had become the reason for the dispute, but he was also the only presence capable of forcing father and son to speak honestly. William explained that he had acted because the relocation was scheduled to happen before the family could object. The prince said the order had not invited discussion. It had been designed to create a finished decision that everyone else would be pressured to accept. Once the memorial was moved, respect would have been used as an excuse to stop anyone from moving it back. Charles listened without interruption. Then the king admitted the truth he had avoided for too long. He had not challenged Camilla because he feared reopening the old conflict between his wife and his children. He had convinced himself that silence would prevent another division. Instead, that silence had allowed the division to deepen. William's answer carried years of pain. He told his father that preserving peace could not mean allowing one person's memories to be displaced whenever they became inconvenient. The prince was not speaking only about Philip. Charles understood that immediately. This wound had been shaped by earlier moments when William had waited for his father to intervene and watched him choose quietness instead. Then Charles asked the question neither of them could escape. "Do you trust me?" William hesitated. The future king admitted that his trust had not been broken by one garden order alone. It had weakened across years of difficult moments, when the king's silence had felt safer for everyone except those left carrying the consequences. Charles reached into his coat and removed the unsigned relocation order. He tore it once down the center, handed one half to William, and kept the other. "The responsibility belongs to both reigns," the monarch said. Then he made his choice. Philip's memorial would remain permanently in its original place. Charles would personally withdraw Camilla's renovation proposal and announce the decision before the household could turn it into a war between the present queen and the future king. The wound between father and son had begun to close. But the palace still had to explain why Camilla's order had been reversed, and beyond the gates, the world was already waiting. The palace attempted to contain the announcement within a brief statement about preserving the historic character of the royal garden. The public saw something far more powerful. By sunrise, the dispute had become a national argument over memory, authority, and whether a new reign had the right to rearrange the symbols of the old. Then one photograph appeared outside the palace gates, capturing the entire conflict without revealing a single private conversation. Charles confirmed that Philip's memorial would remain permanently in its established position, and that every proposed alteration to the surrounding garden had been cancelled. The king's statement was brief, but its meaning was unmistakable. The relocation order was dead. So was the Rose Terrace that had threatened to replace the tribute with a symbol of the present reign. Palace officials described the outcome as a collective family decision. That phrase meant the resolution had been reached through consultation among senior relatives, rather than imposed by one royal figure. The carefully chosen language protected Camilla from direct criticism, yet it also acknowledged that William had started the review and forced the household to confront what had nearly happened. Camilla received the newspapers at breakfast. Her aide placed them quietly beside her, but the queen did not ask for a summary. She saw the headlines, turned each front page downward, and continued stirring tea she never drank. Publicly, the palace had offered dignity. Privately, she understood that the country had interpreted the reversal as a defeat. William refused to celebrate. The prince instructed his staff through a documented morning briefing not to describe the decision as a victory over Camilla. Philip's memory, he warned, could not become a weapon in another royal feud. He had protected the memorial to preserve family history, not to humiliate the woman who had tried to move it. One newspaper abandoned restraint. Its front page carried a full-page image of the untouched tribute beneath two enormous words: "He stays." William appeared in the background, walking toward the garden path. The image turned a private palace disagreement into a national symbol of resistance. Then the public supplied its own verdict. Outside Buckingham Palace, an elderly naval veteran placed a handwritten card beside the gates. "A man's service should not be moved aside," it read. Others soon added flowers, rosemary, and brief messages honoring Philip. What began as one quiet gesture became a gathering of public feeling. During the evening broadcast, a presenter held up the image of the veteran's card and called the dispute a test of whether royal renewal required forgetting those who came before. Public sympathy now stood firmly behind William. Camilla faced one final choice: defend the order and deepen the wound, or accept Charles's verdict before the family returned to the memorial. The country had delivered its judgment through flowers, headlines, and one unforgettable photograph. Only one final act remained inside the family itself. The family returned to the palace garden 1 week later. No announcement described the gathering as an apology, yet everyone understood why they were there. Philip's memorial remained exactly where it had always stood. The flowers had been restored, the pathway cleaned, and the relocation equipment removed. William arrived beside Charles. Anne and Edward waited near the plaque. Then Camilla approached alone, carrying the one object that would determine whether the dispute ended in bitterness or dignity. Charles spoke first. The king formally recorded that his father's memorial would remain in its original place and could never be moved during any future palace redesign. William then presented a family memorial charter, a formal agreement requiring direct relatives to be consulted before historic royal tributes could be altered. The monarch approved it. Camilla faced the family without her earlier certainty. The queen consort admitted that she had treated the garden as a symbol of the current reign, without respecting how deeply the memorial belonged to Philip's children and grandchildren. She had wanted renewal. Instead, she had nearly created a wound the family might never have healed. Anne did not offer easy forgiveness. The Princess Royal accepted Camilla's handwritten withdrawal of the relocation request and thanked her for returning the decision to the family. It was not warmth, but it was dignity. Edward remained beside his sister, his silence showing that the pain had not vanished. Camilla then revealed what she had carried. It was a small rosemary plant taken from Philip's original garden. She placed it beside the memorial without asking for praise. William watched and understood that blocking the order had never been about defeating her. It had been about proving that progress must never require the quiet removal of memory. Charles gathered them closer and declared that Philip's place in the garden, and in the monarchy's living story, was secure. Camilla accepted the boundary. William's authority was recognized. The dispute ended without the memorial moving a single inch. Before leaving, Charles adjusted the rosemary plant and pressed the soil around its roots. William watched his father complete the gesture. No one spoke, because nothing more needed to be said. The memorial remained because Philip had never been merely a name carved into stone. He was a father, grandfather, consort, and force, still living through those around him. Camilla's mistake was believing the future could be strengthened by pushing the past aside. William established the principle that would define his reign. Progress would come, but never through erasure. Charles restored trust with his son. The monarchy would survive not by replacing every chapter, but by carrying its deepest loyalties forward. Thanks for watching.
So, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.